Well, hello everyone, it's Miss Jessica here, and today we're going to learn about some art history. Our focus here, as you can see, is ancient Egyptian art. This is one of my favorite subjects to learn about in art history, so I'm very glad to be here today to teach you guys some more. Now, we're going to do a lot of learning about where Egypt is and who the people are we're going to learn about, and even the art. Then afterwards, we're going to make a picture, just like you see here, of Queen Nefertiti. So for that, we're going to be needing a practice draw paper, final paper, pencil, Sharpie, and for me, I'm going to be using markers, oil pastels, and watercolors. We'll go over that again as we get towards the drawing portion, but let's go ahead and begin with the art history part. All right, now as you can see here, this is Queen Nefertiti. She is from Egypt. And we're going to learn a little bit about where Egypt is and who are the people to talk about, what kind of art did they did, and how did they do everything. So what I want to begin with is to show you where is Egypt on a map. So I'm going to go ahead and I want you guys to take a look. Now maybe in your head you're thinking, oh, I think I know where it is. Let's see if you are correct. So as you see here, this is a map of the whole world, and Egypt is all the way right here where my mouse is, and it's in the continent of Africa. Maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't, but Africa is super, super big, and it has a lot of different places in it that maybe you didn't realize before. And so our focus here is right here in Egypt. Now, we're going to talk about ancient Egypt. That is different from today, but all of it influenced the people and the culture that we have today. Another important thing to know is the Nile River. You might have heard of that before. And on the map, it starts up here in this body of water, and it comes down into Egypt and flows right through it and stops about here. It's the longest river in the world, and it is very, very important to the Egyptian people. Now that we know where Egypt is, it's in Africa, we need to learn who are the people that we need to focus on for our class today. So let's jump back to here. So we know Egypt, it's in Africa. We're going to put that at the top. And the three different kinds of people we're going to focus on today are kings, queens, and pharaohs. Now, you might have heard of these people before. We've heard of these titles, but let's learn a little bit about who are these kings and queens and pharaohs. A very famous king, his name is Akhenaten. So if you can say that with me, say Akhenaten. It's a really big word. He's an ancient Egyptian king. And he was so famous because when he became king, he changed everything about the religion and where Egypt even was the capital city. He changed all of it. So he's really important, including to art, because the way that Egyptians were drawing and painting and making their hieroglyphics changed when he became king. So that's really important to know who he is. A famous queen is named Hatshepsut. So try saying that with me too, Hatshepsut. And she was a super famous queen. She started as a queen, just like kings do, but they then can become pharaohs. And she is the only queen, the only female to become a pharaoh, at least that we know of today. And I think that is so important to note because most pharaohs were male, but she was a female. So we're going to look a little bit more about her as well today too. The last person is not a king or a queen. His name is Imhotep. So maybe you've heard of his name. He's pretty famous, Imhotep. And he was famous because he's the first recorded artist in history. In all of the world, the first time we hear the word of an artist who creates is Imhotep. Before that, we don't have a name to put to any of the artists. So I think that is super important that we remember him today. All right, but the most important thing is to remember kings, queens, and of course, our pharaohs. Now that we know who we're talking about and we know where it is, we need to know when it is. So I'm going to grab my timeline that we've been working on. Maybe you have one too, and maybe you're super interested on the date of when ancient Egypt is. So if you look on this side, here is all of our good information about ancient art. And Egypt is right here. Ancient Egyptian art. It's 5000 BC to 300 AD. That's a long time that ancient Egypt was around. It actually was the same time as Near East, which we learned about last week. These two, they came around the same time. So you might notice some of their art or architecture looks the same. All right, so let's talk about how. How did they build some of this stuff, some of their art? So one of the main things that you kind of even see right here is Egypt had a lot of pyramids, just like you see there. And so we're going to talk about the pyramids, how did they make them, and take a look at them. So the pyramids were created out of stones. And these stones were huge. And the Egyptian people took these stones and they broke them up into different shapes, like rectangles and squares. And they, by hand, carried them up and created what you see here, these giant pyramids. These are the pyramids at Giza. They're the most famous Egyptian pyramids that we know of, or some of the most famous. Here's the three main ones, but there's also these little tiny ones underneath. And look how large these are. These are people down here, where my mouse is. Those are full-grown people, and that's how big these pyramids are. Now, unlike last time when you learned about the Near East and all their pyramids inside were filled with things, what's important about Egyptian art is that underground is where all of the things would be. That's where they would bury the pharaohs, they would put tunnels and stuff inside underground. Excuse me, and why did they build these? And it's important to know that they built these pyramids because they wanted to help their pharaohs get into the afterlife. So the ancient Egyptians believed in afterlife. So once someone died, they went into a brand new life. They lived again somewhere else. And so it's important that the pharaohs went to the afterlife because if the pharaohs didn't, they believed it would affect the Nile River. We talked a little bit about that. So if the Nile River went bad, maybe had no more water, they couldn't fish, they couldn't use their boats, and that's just their main source of how they lived. So these pyramids were super, super important to them. Now, they also made other things, including temples. And this is Hatshepsut's temple that we talked about. Remember, she was our famous queen turned into a pharaoh. Look how large this is. You can see these little tiny people on this ramp. This is a big pyramid, or excuse me, temple. And they built lots of these for different people. They also made rock carved in temples, just like you see here. These are actually tombs where people would be buried. And this is a famous one that you might know. It's in Petra. And this is a really good one to talk about. It says, look at the architecture in there. It's quite beautiful. And this is a sculpture or a statue of a queen named Nefertiti. And maybe you've heard of Nefertiti before. She actually was married to Akhenaten, the king we just talked about. That was his wife. And this is called the bust of Nefertiti. It's a really famous piece of art. So what we're going to do today is we're going to create our own portrait of Queen Nefertiti, and we're going to kind of make her look like an Egyptian queen. So I'm very excited to get to do that. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and jump into that today. So we're going to do a practice draw first. So I want everyone to grab a piece of paper to practice on, and I want you guys to grab a pencil. So I'm going to move all these out of the way. We'll kind of review some of that during the class, but we're going to focus on our drawing now. So here's my practice draw. I'm going to use a Sharpie, but I want everyone else to grab a pencil. And what we need to do first is figure out where the head will start. So we're going to draw a big circle towards the top, right about the middle. So I want you guys to watch first and then draw when I'm done. So we're going to draw a nice big circle about that big, kind of in the middle towards the top. Now this is a recorded video, so at any time if you need to pause and stop, please go ahead and do so. All right, so now that we have our head, we're going to draw a curved line for the hat, and this is where her hat touches her head. It's kind of like a crown that Egyptians would wear. Now at the ends where we just drew, we're going to draw two straight lines up towards the top of our paper, and then just connect them with a curved line. We're going to have some fun decorating that a little bit later, but not right now. Then we definitely need to go ahead and erase that line on the inside because we don't want to see it anymore. We can't. And we're going to begin her face. Now, since she's turned to the side, we can only see one of her eyes, and we're going to draw this alligator shape. I like to call it that, or it's like a sideways triangle. We're going to draw a curved line for the front of the eye and a smaller one for the back. That's the pupil, the part we see out of. Now, for the rest of it, profile portraits can be a little tricky, so I just want to encourage everyone today to try their best. Even if it's a little hard, still keep going, and I promise you, the more we try, the better this is going to be, and the more fun it will be. So this is just our practice, so don't worry, we'll draw this again. All right, so we're going to begin with the forehead and nose, so I want everyone to watch first before you draw. We're going to start right by the hat. We're going to curve it up, just like our circle, so watch first. And then right when we get to about the eye, we're going to curve it into the head. Go ahead and let's draw that first. Now I stopped right where my circle was, and I'm just going to keep that line going out a little bit and stop. And that's going to be for the top of our nose. Now in Egyptian art, lots of their lines were pointed. They didn't really round any of it. I mean, they were using chisels on rock. That's going to be hard to make rounded things. So today I'm going to keep everything pointed, like the nose. I'm just going to point it and draw a curved line or straight line down to touch the circle again. Now at this point, it's going to get a little hard to see because it's so small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to a larger piece of paper. But everyone continue to draw on yours. I'm going to show you guys both. So we just created the nose. We drew our straight line out and our curved line in. Underneath that, I'm just going to go ahead. Let's just do one for now. Underneath that, we're going to draw the lip. And so we're going to draw just a little curved line down from the nose touching the circle. It's very small. So now when we draw our smile, a trick to know where to end is actually right where the eye is. So what I'm going to do is draw these dash lines down to right about there. And I know that when I draw my smile, I'm going to have it stop at those lines. So if you want to draw those, go ahead and do that now, and then we'll just erase them when we're done. That's the top of our lip. But the bottom of our lip, we're going to curve it actually. So I'm going to start towards the front, and I'm just going to draw a little curved line down, kind of like a backwards C. Now, Cleopatra, Nefertiti, she probably would have worn some sort of lipstick. She was a queen. So on the bottom, we're just going to draw that line all the way to the end and stop for the bottom lip. And then for the top one, I'm going to go to the middle, and I'm just going to draw a curved or straight line. You can choose which one. And we would color that in later when we go to do our coloring steps. Now, the last thing is the chin. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have some fun with our chin. We're going to go right underneath our lip. Not all the way to the end, move in a little bit. We're just going to draw a straight line down. And we know where to stop because we don't want it to be any shorter than our circle. So if I took my finger and I drew a line, oh, that's good. I drew that pretty well there. I might go down a little more. Then I'm just going to draw a straight line over and stop. It's kind of like a backwards L. What you could do, you can leave it that way. I'm going to. But if you wanted to, you could curve some of these edges. But remember, the Egyptians like to keep things a little pointed. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to look at that a little bit more. But I'm going to go ahead and now move into our other drawing we were working on before here. So right now, everyone should have their face like this, but on their paper. So I just need to go ahead and I'm going to finish mine real fast, just like everyone else did. So I have my lips and my chin, and I'm going to stop. Now we need our ear. To know where to start our ear, we're going to go to the back of the eye and draw little dash lines over to about there. And then I'm going to draw a big letter C for my ear. Then you can erase the little lines as well when you're done. Now, some Egyptians had hair. Some didn't. They actually liked to shave their head. They thought it looked really beautiful back then. So if you want to draw hair, you can, but if you don't have to. But to draw hair for Nefertiti today, we're going to touch the ear and draw a curved line up to the hat. Then we're going to jump to the back of the ear and draw a curved line down to the circle. Last thing would be an eyebrow. So I'm just going to draw a curved line above her eye, and if you want to, you can even make it a little thicker. Now the last thing is her neck and shoulders. And if you think back to that picture we saw, her neck was super thin and long, and they also believed that that looked very beautiful. And I think so too, so let's go ahead and try that as well. We're gonna start by the head and the hat, and we're gonna curve our line down and stop. I didn't go all the way to the edge of the paper. Now I'm gonna go under the chin, and I'm gonna draw that curved line down and stop one more time. Now we just need to draw her shoulders. So I'm gonna start on my right line and I'm gonna curve it down to the bottom of the paper. But for my left shoulder, I'm just gonna go right off the edge. And then last thing would be to give her a collar. So we're gonna start right where the neck would be touching the shoulders and draw a diagonal line down to the bottom of the paper. Then again, start right where the shoulder meets the neck and draw one more down to the bottom of the paper. I think we should go ahead and make that a little thicker so we can decorate that. So I'm just gonna draw 2 more lines on the shoulders to the ends of the papers. Now this is the end of our practice draw. At this point, I want to encourage everyone to go look at their paper and see if they need to fix anything or practice something else. But we are going to go ahead and move into our final drawing today. We're going to add a lot more creativity, so don't worry if you wanted to add more. All right, let's go ahead and grab our final piece of paper to draw on. Now this one should probably be either a watercolor paper or just a really thick piece of paper that they're going to use today, because I'm going to use some watercolors and maybe you are too. Now, if you have your practice draw, please keep it close by. Don't move it far away because you might need to use it to help you draw today. But let's go ahead and begin with that circle right in the middle of our paper again. All right, now for this time I'm going to go just a little quicker because this is our final draw and we already drew this together. So if you do need to pause and stop to do it, please go ahead and do so. But now let's draw our hat. So we're going to draw our curved line for the top of the hat, 2 straight lines going up from the ends where we drew them, and then connect that together. Now make sure you erase anything on the inside. And this is where we're going to have some fun. We're going to draw 2 curved lines inside the middle of the hat. We'll decorate that later, so don't draw anything just yet. All right, so now what I want to do with everyone is we're going to do our head. So we're going to draw our alligator looking mouth here for her eye, our curved line down for the inside of our eye, and we need to begin our face. So please grab your practice draw or maybe go back to the part before where you saw me drawing the head, but I'm going to go ahead and begin with our top of our head, curving it down into our circle. Right about where the eye would be. Then I'll just continue my little nose coming out and curving it in. Now remember, I'm keeping it nice and pointed. Once I'm done, we're just going to curve our line down for our top lip. And remember, we need to make it smiling. So I'm going to add my dash lines down, and then I'm going to curve my smile in. Now, the more you curve it, the more happy she looks. But if you want to make her look a little bit more straight-faced, you can just draw a straight line. Underneath that, we're just going to draw our little backwards C for her lip. And then maybe you want to do lipstick. So remember, that's just going to point the top and the bottom of those lines to make it look like she's smiling. Last is that chin. So remember, we worked on our L shape, our backwards L. So we're just going to draw our straight line down. And then we're going to do a straight line over. And this time, mine touches with the bottom of my circle, which is pretty cool to see. Awesome job, you guys. Let's go ahead while we're thinking about it. We're going to give her her eyebrow, so our curved line above. It's almost like a little rectangle. And then we need to know where that ear is going to go. So we're going to draw our little dash lines over. And that's where we're going to begin our backwards C. Now, I want you guys to choose right now if you want hair. Maybe you don't. Maybe you drew it and you're like, no, I don't really want hair this time. Because remember, Egyptians didn't always have hair. But if you do, we're going to start on our ear and curve our line up to the hat. Jump to the back of the ear and curve it down to our circle. All right, now great job. Let's go ahead and move to the neck and shoulders. At the back of the hat, where it touches the circle, we're going to draw our curved line down for the neck and stop. Then go under the chin and curve your line down and stop again. Now remember, her neck is very thin and long, so don't worry today. I love it. It looks really good. Now our front shoulder is going to curve down to the bottom of the paper, and the back one's just to kind of continue right off the edge. Now remember, for her collar, we're going to make it a little pointy. So right where the neck and shoulder met, we're just going to curve our line slanted down to the bottom, and one more. And then make that a little bit bigger so you guys can add some color there a little bit later. All right, now that's the end of our draw today. But what I want to encourage you guys to do is think about creativity. Don't add too much because we can always add more later with our oil pastels. But if you would like to, you could give her some sort of earring. Egyptians wore nice, big, or even small earrings that were simple. They didn't have a lot of things on them. They usually were gold. We're also going to be adding our eyeliner. So what I'm going to have you guys do here is to trace all the pencil lines. Now, I want you to watch me real fast. When you trace your lines, you're not tracing your circle. So you need to erase any line that was part of your circle, including the line back here. We don't want that. And when you go to draw, if you drew hair, I want you to color it in with your Sharpie. Her hair was black. So if you have hair, you're going to fill that in with your Sharpie and your eyebrow, because that's also part of her hair as well. Now don't color in the eye because we're going to do a different color for that. But then I want you to add her eyeliner. So if you're ready to do eyeliner, go ahead and continue. But if you need a trace, go ahead and press pause and then press play when you're ready for the eyeliner. Now for the eyeliner, Egyptians had this thick eyeliner. You probably have seen it before. So on the top of her eye, we're just going to take the Sharpie and kind of draw a rectangle that comes outside just like that. Then underneath, we're just going to draw a smaller one, just like you see there, and I kind of colored it in. So go ahead and add the eyeliner. Then we're all done with our Sharpies. Your picture should look something like this one. I made this one earlier because I didn't have any of my circle lines on the inside. Notice she has her pointed nose and chin, and now we're ready to do our final color. So like I said at the beginning, I'm going to be using markers, oil pastels, and watercolors. But if you only have one or two of those things, that's all right. Just use what you have. All right, let's begin with our markers. We're going to start by coloring in the hat and the clothes. I want mine to look kind of similar to each other because that's what she would have worn, similar colors. So I'm going to do a blue. Again, you guys can do any color you want though. For the hat, I'm going to color the top and bottom in a light blue. So look, I'm outlining around with my markers. And then once I'm done, I'll fill that in. And I'm going to do long lines up and down and try to get all my white spaces. So go ahead. If you need to, press pause and to color it in, because some of us, it might take us a little bit longer, and that is okay. Not a problem. Now you might want to do a different color for the middle stripe. I think I will for sure. So I'm just going to keep filling this in. Now hopefully you remember some of the things we learned about today. Remember the people we learned about. Kings, queens, and pharaohs. Pharaohs are super important to Egyptian history. Maybe you remember some of the king and queen that we learned about. Remember King Akhenaten. He was a very famous king who changed Egyptian religion and where the capital of Egypt was. And that's something no one had ever done before. And then do you remember Queen Hatshepsut? She was a very, very famous queen, and she was known for being one of the only female pharaohs that we know of. We don't know of anyone else. All right, I'm going to go ahead, and I think I'll do a little bit darker blue for my middle stripe. But again, I want to encourage you guys to do different colors that you would like for your queen today. Do you guys remember the queen of our picture today? She was married to Akhenaten. Queen Nefertiti, good job. She actually was also the mother of King Tut. Maybe you guys have heard of him. He's a very famous young king because he was super young when he became pharaoh, King Tut. So kind of some fun things. Now, if you're not done with the hat, go ahead and keep coloring it in. Press pause if you need to. But I'm going to go ahead and work on the clothes. Now, I think I'm going to continue with my light blue so it matches for my collar. But again, you guys can do any color you want. Don't worry. So I'm just doing my outline and filling in, making sure I get all my white spots. And then I think for the other part of my clothes, I'm going to do a brown. I think I want it to look a little bit more realistic. They probably would have worn some sort of tan clothing within all their beautiful jewelry on top. Now, something fun about the color blue is Egyptians, actually maybe I won't do brown. I'll probably do maybe a yellow because that's actually my favorite color. The Egyptians, they loved the color blue because they thought it looked like a royal color. They did a lot of statues in this blue. It's wonderful, it's everywhere, but only usually the royalty got to have the color blue. That's kind of why I wanted to choose that for her today. All right, so I'm just about done with my clothes here. We only have a little marker left, so make sure you pause the video if you're not done. But when you're ready to move on to the next step, go ahead and press play, and then we'll move on to our last marker steps. Now, the last thing we're going to do with our marker is lips and eyes. So I'm going to give her some red lips today, just because she's a queen, and I think that's maybe something she would have had on. And then for her eyes, Egyptians had very dark brown eyes, but they could also be black. So if you wanted to do brown for the eyes, you could, or you guys can just take a black marker or even your Sharpie. Maybe you already colored it in, and you can just go ahead and fill in just the circle. Don't color anything else. That's the white of our eyes. Now that's the end of our markers today. Notice we didn't do any creativity yet because we're going to do that with our oil pastels. So go ahead and let's grab some oil pastels when you are done. Now we're going to begin with the skin. In Egyptians, they had darker toned skin. It wasn't as light as mine, so I'm going to choose a darker color. I probably wouldn't do peach. That's going to be a little too light, but you guys can do any skin tone you want. I'm going to do a little bit darker here. This is more of like a lighter brown. It's a little darker tan. And what I want us to do is I want you to take the paper off and break it in half. It's probably going to be a little too long for what we're going to do today. So when you're ready, go ahead and look back up, and we're going to begin. Now we're going to do a technique where we're going to lay our oil pastel down, pinch, and pull. And it's going to look kind of bumpy. And we're going to do that all over her skin. And what this does is it makes it look a little bit more like a statue, like stone. Kind of like how that statue of her was. The bust of Nefertiti is what it's called. And a bust is just a picture of a head and sometimes the shoulders. And a lot of times people would do that. If you were rich or famous, people would get a bust made of them for their house. Now, I didn't add any on the inside because that's white. So try not to go on the eyes, eyebrows, or lips. If you do it, it's definitely okay. Now, if you're all done, awesome. If not, go ahead and pause and then press play again. The last thing to do is our background and a little bit of creativity. So for creativity today, we're going to decorate her collar and her headwear. Maybe if you added earrings or a necklace, you can go ahead and maybe color those again with our oil pastels. So I'm going to just use some different colors, but you guys can kind of choose whatever you want. She's a queen, so I'm going to use some gold, and I'll probably do some diamond shapes up here on the stripe, and I'll color those in. So if you would like to join me, you can, or go ahead and maybe you want to do a different shape, like a circle or a square, and you guys can add a pattern of some sort inside of her hat. Now, this is a very famous hat that queens would wear in Egypt, so it's good to know that too. You can also do other colors inside if you want, maybe some yellows or blues. I'm just going to add maybe some stripes inside there as well, whatever you would like to do on the hat. Now go ahead and continue, but I'm going to jump down to her collar next, and I'm going to use my gold again, and I'm going to add some circles. Kind of towards the middle or towards the top. And then I'm going to make it look a little bit like her collar or necklace that she had in the bust of Nefertiti. And she had this nice, beautiful like blue color. I'm gonna grab this teal. If you have any blue, you can join me or just do your own color. And I'm gonna add lines at the bottom. They're a little hard to see, but I'm just drawing little stripes on the bottom of the circles. That's something that she probably would have had as well. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'll probably grab gold again, or maybe a white even, but I'm just going to draw some lines to kind of break up the necklace. But again, these are all things you don't have to do. You can just do your own kind of creativity that you want. All right, so continue your creativity, but my last thing I'm going to show you guys today is the background, and then we're going to paint. Our background, we're going to do this fun technique again, and you can do any color, but I'm going to choose a brown because the color would probably have been some sort of wall. Maybe I'll do a little bit lighter. I think actually I'll do a very light peach. I think that'll look really cool. So I'm going to take my paper off and break it in half, and I'm going to lay it down, and I'm going to do those up and down lines I did like on the face. So I'm pretending like this is on a wall, and this is the sand, the color of the stone they would have used. So we talked about the pyramids, and they would have made adobe bricks, some sort of type, for their houses. Maybe not so much for the pyramids because it wouldn't last very long, but they would take mud and sand and they would turn them into these bricks, and then they would build their homes with them as well. So that's what I'm going to pretend in our picture today. Now that's it for oil pastel. So if you would like to continue with your creativity, go ahead and do so, but I'm going to move into our watercolors. For watercolors today, we're just going to paint two things, our skin and our background. So I'm going to begin with the skin. I'm going to grab my largest brush I can, or maybe just the largest one you can find. And I'm going to dip it in my water, wipe it, and I'm going to get this color right here. It's a yellow orange, a very light orange. If you don't have this color, you can also just use yellow, works good for this too. And we're just going to paint right over the oil pastel on the skin. And you're going to see that it's starting to turn a little bit lighter and fills in all the little holes that we had with the oil pastel, but you can still see the really nice texture. So just go ahead now and paint. If it gets too dark, spread it around. Don't let those puddles pool up, otherwise she might just turn a little orange. And try not to go on your eye because we want to keep that white. Remember the whites of our eyes, so don't fill that in. Now go ahead and just continue to paint, and then I'm going to show you guys now the background. All right, so I got to clean my brush. Now for the background again, you guys can really do any color, but think about the wall where it would be. Maybe you want to do a color like royal blues or purple, but I'm going to keep mine the nice dirt wall color, so I'm going to do a brown. You guys could also do a black. You might have seen that already in one of the pictures, and it does look really cool. It just can get kind of messy. So that's up to you. But I'm going to use my brown, and I'm just going to paint over the pastel. Look what happens. You can see my color of oil pastel underneath, and then the brown that's dark kind of fills it in. So we're going to go ahead and just finish that for the whole background. Now, if you do have little puddles, you can get a towel, and you can just kind of very gently tap the water, and it will come onto the towel. But try not to go on your crown or on your Nefertiti face today because it might it's going to get rid of the marker and it won't cover very nice. So just be careful. All right, well, this is the end of our project today. So make sure you finish up that background. If you need to finish anything else, please go back and do so. But thank you so much for an awesome time today. I learned a lot about Egypt, and I hope you did too. I'm going to go ahead and I'll flip it around so I can see everyone. And I want to kind of review a little bit with you as well. All right, so we learned a lot of stuff today about Egypt. And Egypt, remember, it was in Africa, something maybe you didn't know before. And we learned about 3 kinds of people. So we know Egypt was in Africa. I'm going to grab my timeline first so we can see it. And we learned about 3 types of people. The first type was a king. The second one was a queen. And maybe you remember that last one, the very, very famous pharaohs. And we learned about two special kinds of kings and queens. They had really big names. Our first one was King Akhenaten. Akhenaten, maybe you remembered that. And the queen, Hatshepsut. So remember, she became a pharaoh, which was super cool. And one of the most important things to remember today is who was the first artist ever recorded in history. His name was Imhotep. And I'm going to stick him actually right over here because he's super important to know. Imhotep. All right. Now, if you can remember some of that today, awesome. Remember, this information we might get tested on later in like a spelling bee style. So I'd love to be able to have this video help you guys do that. Well, thank you so much for a wonderful class, and we learned a lot about ancient Egypt. My name is Miss Jessica, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.